What's going on, everybody? Brandon Rust here with another live Q&A. Let's fix this camera. Bam, there we go. Awesome. Hope everybody's having a great Friday. I am looking forward to getting back home after the end of today because I planted a bunch of potatoes in the greenhouse, in the hoop house. And so I'm going to go top dress both my outside garden beds, my greenhouse, and my small hoop house and start getting things prepped. I ordered some vermiculite, so that'll show up today. I'm going to start popping seeds, so different pepper seeds, tomato seeds. I have a feeling that the end of March is going to be a good time to start planting. So I am prepping everything. I got some soil. I've got some amendments. I've already got things planted. The potato spuds I actually kept from last season. I grew a ton of potatoes, more than I could eat. And I just kept them in a nice, cool, dark place. And they all started sprouting and, doing their thing. And so I was able to go outside yesterday. It was real warm. It's been warm all week. It's been in the mid 70s. So got my potatoes planted. I planted my garlic earlier at the end of at the beginning of winter or the end of fall. So garlic will come up naturally. Onions and the chives are like perennial. So what's really interesting is I didn't know this because I grew onions for the first time last year. And after I harvested the onions, more onion sprouts popped up after I harvested. So I've got lots of onions. And this year, where I typically do my outdoor, where I grow, 14, 15, 16 footers, I'm not going to do that again this year. Instead, I'm going to use that space. I'm going to grow a tomato and pepper forest. So I'm going to see if I can do the same thing and get 15, 16 footers with tomatoes and peppers. And then I think towards the middle of summer is when I'll actually put regular plants outside. That way I can get a bunch of hunting done without having huge unmanageable plants. Freeloader says, I got my beans. I can't wait to pop them. Appreciate it. Sweet, dude. Glad. Yeah, if you guys don't already know, the Mama Wolf Kush is listed on the website. I haven't made an official drop announcement on like IG or anything like that. But if you guys are in this channel, you guys are in the know. That's the Chem Dog Black Lime Reserve F2s. The selections that Mama Wolf, which is Yellow Wolf's mom, picked out. Those are available on the website. What are we going to be talking about today? Nobody knows, says my garlic stays tiny. This time I planted in fall. I hope I harvest big this year. Yeah, man, me too. I hope so. I personally, my goal every year is to grow everything that I need for Huevos Rancheros. And so if I have chickens, the only thing that I typically don't grow is corn. So I don't have the ingredients to make tortillas, and I don't know how to make tortillas anyway. But I grow peppers, tomatoes. I usually grow different herbs. I'll grow potatoes, lots of root vegetables. So garlic, onions, leek, potatoes, and carrots, because I eat a lot of those things. And so what I try to do is I try to grow enough food to completely offset my grocery costs. And the only thing that I need to buy during the growing season is typically meat, and if I want snacks, because I'll do my own condiments. Like making mayonnaise is really easy if you have chickens. If you got tomatoes, you can make ketchup or marinara or pasta sauces. Pepper sauce, obviously, you can make things like salsa and all that other stuff. Those clones just finally came. Holy crap, dude. That is crazy. You can try, but I'll replace them. If your clones don't make it on a drop, which is fucking so upsetting to me because I fucking mailed out the clones next day overnight, which is like it's more expensive to ship that way. And I expect the UPS to fucking that's like the postal service is like the bane of my fucking business, dude, because they for the most part they're okay, but dude, they fucking lag. Uptown Micro says, love your Micro Plus and Calcel, my favorite so far. If you are not a full crop user, if you're not using any of our products and you're wondering where to start, highly recommend with that combination. Micro Plus and calcium silica, game changer, regardless of how you're growing. It's also kind of how I hook people. Once I get people to use that calcium silica and that Micro Plus, dude, they're like, dude, I gotta try all this other stuff. I actually had my friend Ben from Rizal Ranch. He's a licensed farm out here. He does greenhouse and rosin production. I'm thinking about going to go check his farm out. It's not too far from my house. And he's running all automated systems. He's running humates through his lines. And 420 Dreams asks, is Mama Wolf Kush a branch off the Black D? Yes. So what I did was when I grew out the ChemDog Black Lime Reserve, the majority of the phenos were like Chemi and Limey, but there was an outlier which was like a sweet pheno, and that's what she liked the best. She really liked that sweet one, and so that's what we used as the mom. And then what I did when I hunted through the males, I found a male that looked identical in structure, the way it grows, in the leaf morphology, everything to that female, and I made F2s with that. Now, there will be additional ChemD Black Lime Reserve F2s from some different selections because I'm doing some hunts right now. I have one that smells like halitosis dumpster funk with trop lime in it. It's super fucking awesome. I have two other ones too that are like, there's like a variance. There's like the heavy halitosis dumpster funk with the trop lime, and then there's more like these like more sour lime trop lime pheno. So there's like the three of them that I'm like running back in the beds right now. Out of the ones that these are the three that I narrowed down. I'm running them so I can like really get in there and see which one of them is the best of the best. So they're different. I never see any seeds available on your site. Am I in the wrong place? Yeah. So I have two different websites, one for nutrients and then one is the hemp website. So if you're looking for the seeds, it's at Bokashi, Bokashi Seed Vault, BokashiSeedVault.com. I'll put it in the chat. BokashiSeedVault.com. But even on that Bokashi Seed Vault, again, when I do drop, stuff doesn't last. It goes really quick. And what ends up happening is a lot of people will be like, oh, I missed it. If you go into the website, most of the stuff is sold out, but there's some stuff there. Yeah, garlic does grow well out here in Oklahoma. Yeah, the only thing that you need for mayonnaise is egg whites and oil. But what I also do is when I make mayonnaise, I add a little bit of salt, I add a little bit of vinegar, and I add a little bit of Dijon mustard. Spores will be back in about 10 days. 10 days. They're on their way. And this year, we're doing registration. We already have the thing submitted, the registration for the arbuscular. No, it's the endomycorrhizal fungus, which is the Rhizophagus irregularis strain. We're registering that, and then we're also looking at EPA registration for the pesticides. So Bruvaria bassiana, Minotaur harzanium, and the Bacillus thuringiensis. We're looking at getting all of those registered so we can list them on the website. It's a little bit more of an intensive process. It might take all year. How hard do you guys strip the plant? I don't strip plants at all. I do selective defoliation to help with light penetration and make sure that leaves aren't overlapping, but I don't like to remove a ton of stuff. Yep. This is a great comment. Ken says winter snow is mild this year. Where I live, that means the pest pressure will be higher in the growing season this year. Order your microbe spores now. They will be popular this year. Yeah, it's going to be crazy this year. And we're actually planning ahead for spring. So once like, March, April, the end of March, beginning of April comes, we're going to have a ton of inventory so that way we do not have any interruptions in distribution or in availability. But you guys want to start thinking about it, because in a couple of months, which is going to come quick, you're going to want to thinking about starting to treat your soil before planting to make sure that you outcompete any pathogens. You're going to want to make sure that you spray down your property and not just the area that you're going to be cultivating in, because Alternaria is rampant. It's spreading like wildfire, and Alternaria is not selective in what it can affect. So it'll be on oak, it'll be in your grass, it'll be on everything. Am I ever going to be able to ship to Canada? I ship seeds to Canada, but I do not ship fertilizers. I cannot import any agricultural products because I don't have Canadian registration. And like I mentioned yesterday, Canadian registration can take fucking years and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I'll look into it. The last time I checked, it seemed like a real huge pain in the ass. I've got some more people working for me now, so maybe it's something that they can look into. And but the thing is, it doesn't so much make sense for us to register personally, because if we're doing DTC, let's say we did register products in Canada and we were doing direct to consumer sales via online, the amount of shipping that you guys would have to pay for your packages is probably 25, maybe even 30% of the value of what you paid for. Smoking on some Blueberry Train Max Skunk Cut. You don't look the ganja head part. How did you develop into where you are now? Did I ever have dreads? No, but I used to have fucking hair down to my fucking waist. I had long hair for years and years and years, a decade. And then when I turned 28, I cut it, and then I grew it back out. And then once I moved to Oklahoma, I just kept it short. I blend in real well here, so I kind of just do that, flying under the radar. I've been doing this though for, dude. I started smoking in 1998, so I'm 42. I started smoking when I was 14. Yeah, lemon juice. Yeah, I think I've used lemon juice too. Maybe it was lemon juice and not vinegar that I used. I can't remember. It's funny when I don't talk. 420 Dreams has said he just did a soil drench with the Bacillus subtilis and the Micro Plus cow cell first thing this morning. Oh, they respond so quick too. Here's a good question from the comment section. What's your take on neem seed meal in living soil? I use it lightly, but curious if it affects biology negatively. No, but I don't use any type of neem product. So neem seed meal, neem meal, azadirachtin, neem oil, none of that. And the reason why is because if you guys probably heard of the scromiting, right? They made this term up, like screaming and vomiting, like that's a real thing, but it's caused by what's called hypermeiosis syndrome. However, my first experience with hypermeiosis syndrome, I had a business partner who actually died from it. He became extremely dehydrated from, he'd get in hot showers and burn himself. He'd be throwing up all the time. And I think hypermeiosis syndrome, I don't think it has anything to do with cannabis potency. I think it has to do with neem products, because where neem is conventionally cultivated in India, they use heavy pesticides in those areas, and I strongly believe that those products have pesticide contamination, and that is what's causing hypermeiosis syndrome. So people who are using azadirachtin, neem oils for integrated pest management, or using neem seed meals, neem meals in their organic cultivation. So for me, I ex-nade any type of neem products from all cultivation, because like it's not definitive, it's just a hypothesis, but that's where I think hypermeiosis syndrome personally, I think that's where it comes from. And um so I don't, that's the reason why I don't use neem products. As far as affecting biology negatively, no. Here's a question. I cloned and stretch after transplant. The clones went through re-veg, now showing single blades. Should I wait? I mean, this is the thing. If you wait for it to the hormones to correct themselves, because that's usually caused by a hormone imbalance or something to do with the plant hormones. If you wait for it to correct itself, I think you're going to have better results than if you were to just go ahead and flip. Is there somewhere you can get the results? No, because we didn't do the Battle of the Breeders, because we have been waiting to open our dispensary and grow, which is scheduled for next month, for March. We're finally going to be opening. So we're going to actually be starting the Battle of the Breeders. We'll be doing the podcast, breeder interviews, education, facility updates, all of that stuff. Nico says, I work with the genetic research lab. That's really cool, man. That must be really fun. I love doing science. That's like my thing. Here's another question from the comment section from Mike Steely. With the spores, are they good to fight Septoria? I have a bad problem with it. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that Septoria. I initially thought that what I was seeing was Septoria, and then I noticed that it was also affecting the grass in my yard. It was also affecting the oak trees in my yard. And so I started thinking, well, this doesn't seem like cannabis septoria, simply because it's a selective pathogen. So it doesn't hop from different species of plants. So I was like, I think I'm dealing with something else. And I I've known about Alternaria, but it wasn't something I had done a bunch of research on and stuff at that particular point, because it's not something that typically had come up in conversations around cannabis. And I went to the CanMed conference down in Puerto Rico. I met with Kevin McKernan from Medicinal Genomics, and I was telling him, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I think it's a different pathogen. I'd love to be able to identify it. And he's like, yeah, dude, well, send it in. We can identify and see what's going on. And so I ended up sending him samples of infected material from different species of plants, and they did genetic analysis, and they saw that it was Alternaria. So, initially I thought it was Septoria, and then my mind was like, I don't think this is Septoria. So I'm going to try to see if we can identify it. Sent stuff to them, and they all identified 3 different species of Alternaria. The most dominant species, interestingly enough, was something that is more I think it's more of an opportunistic. It's not necessarily really considered a pathogen. It's a ubiquitous Alternaria strain that's kind of just everywhere, and it's not really known to cause damage to plants. It just is what it is. It is endophytic. It'll live on the phyllosphere. However, there was to a lesser degree, a smaller percentage of those Alternaria populations were a known pathogenic species. In fact, there was 22% was like a Alternaria species that wasn't known to do damage. And then it was like 6% of of the whole population was a known pathogenic form of Alternaria. And then I think it was like 1 or 2% was another pathogenic strain. And so in my mind, I was like, that's really interesting that we're seeing like such a small percentage of the total microbiome be a pathogenic Alternaria. Well, 22% is like this just non-pathogenic species. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, I wonder if there's things like horizontal gene transfer happening, and if the pathogenic species are passing on characteristics through their DNA to these other species that are actually causing a more widespread infection. And so, I'm theorizing. I have a hypothesis that these non-pathogenic species are becoming virulent, but the only way to do that would to do some science. And so it might be something that would be interesting to look into, that I might have the opportunity to do sometime this year with Cove Environmental and Dr. Punji he's a professor of biology at OSU, who we did an additional follow-up on Alternaria with. But I think most likely what you're seeing is probably not that Septoria. And the thing about Alternaria is because it can infect a wider diversity of plants, and also it doesn't require a host to live. So while Septoria requires the host, it'll kill plants slowly, or it won't outright kill them. It'll infect them, and they can kind of still live, although they'll be damaged. They won't yield as well. They won't have as good quality. They'll have problems. The Alternaria will go to the extreme, and it'll outright kill its host. And so after it kills its host, it can live in the decomposing plant remains. It can also survive things like thermophilic composting and different sorts of composting. And it spreads. The Canadia, when you see the spots, what you'll see is necrotic spotting, and you'll see black dots. And if you take a microscope, what you'll see those spores, the Canada. And those Canada are extremely they're extremely soluble, and they're very easy to distribute through water and through rain and through fertigation events. And so Alternaria is much, much more. So it's something that you need to be way more concerned about. than Septoria. However, they're really hard to distinguish apart. So you might have Septoria, you might have Alternaria, or you might develop Septoria, which weakens your plant, and then Alternaria comes in and finishes the job. So there's different types of situations that you have to be aware of. But the benefit of this is beneficial microbes, trichoderma, always coming back to that trichoderma. Trichoderma, Bacillus subtilis combination, absolutely. If you look at the science, if you go to Google Scholar and you type in trichoderma, Bacillus subtilis, integrated pest management or agriculture, there's thousands of white papers that show efficacy for integrated pest management, efficacy in the soil, on the phylosphere. And so something to just be aware of is you need to take proper action before you even plant, especially if you're going to be doing cannabis outdoors. If you're in the Midwest or on the East Coast, it's just been getting worse and worse. Copper, I'm not letting you out right now. I'm in the middle of a podcast, buddy. Is Septoria a problem that you get with overwatering? Well, a lot of these pathogens are ubiquitous to the environment, and so you just kind of need to outcompete them, and you need to do, like in agronomy, when you're doing microbes, timing, placement, and quantity, all make a huge difference in the efficiency of how those things are going to function. And so, Septoria, overwatering can definitely cause more pathogens. But when I'm thinking about overwatering, I'm usually thinking more on the lines of things like Fusarium and Pythium and those types of Rhizoconia, those types of pathogens. And then when I'm thinking about leaf surface pathogens, I'm usually looking at Alternaria, botrytis, powdery mildew, Septoria, sooty molds, etc. Here's another good question. If there are separate bacteria and fungi, is it better to introduce a consortium all at once or in a separate applications so each can form colonies instead of doing battle? It's a really good point, because if a lot of people will ask, hey, what happens if you use trichoderma and mycorrhizal? And it's like, well, it really depends on the environment, because if there's proper resources, there's proper carbon for energy, there's adequate nutrients, all of those things will work synergistically together. It only, the antagonisms really occur when you have limited resources, right? When you have, it could be limited availability of water, limited availability of carbon, limited availability of gas and air exchange, right? Soil structure. All of these, when all of these things are in balance, you're going to have a better ability for those microbes to also work hand in hand. However, there is science that also shows that specific combinations of specific microbial strains function exponentially better than a single organism on their own. So in the case of trichoderma, right? Trichoderma is a fungus, the Bacillus subtilis is a bacteria. What'll happen is the trichoderma will actually work like an endophytic mycorrhizal fungus. It'll also colonize the plant as an endophyte, so it'll colonize the vascular transport tissues. But extracellular, right? It works like mycorrhizal fungi, where it will create those fungal hyphae, those fungal filaments, and those fungal filaments will actually be colonized, right? The bacteria is smaller than those fungal structures, and the bacteria will actually colonize those networks. And what's happening is they're working synergistically together. And so they're producing similar metabolites that benefit both of each other, and then they're producing beneficial compounds like enzymes and proteins that help us cycle nutrients, or chitinase that will break down other types of fungal cell walls, or they're producing phosphatase, or they're producing signaling molecules that stimulates acquired systemic resistance. And so you know, I highly recommend watching the videos on microbial consortiums on this same channel, because we have other things too, like the lactic acid bacteria, the yeast, photosynthetic bacteria, and bacillus, right? Those all produce different metabolites. They produce different chemical compounds, and some of those compounds can be used as fuel and energy and nutrients for the proliferation and growth of other microbes. And so what's essentially happening is different consortiums, not all microbes do this together, but when you have certain ones, they function differently when they're together. And a good example of this is, so yeast and lactic acid bacteria, they can break down simple carbohydrates really, really easily. So simple sugars, things like molasses or sucrose, fructose, and they're really efficient at converting those sugars into other compounds, right? So yeast will produce, it'll produce CO2 during this process of metabolism, right? And CO2 that's being produced can be utilized by the photosynthetic bacteria. And then that photosynthetic bacteria is going to catabolize that that carbon from the CO2. It's going to utilize that. It's going to utilize the sun for energy and produce things like amino acids, which are going to feed the bacillus bacteria and the lactic acid bacteria and the yeast. And the yeast will also produce, it'll produce alcohols, right? And then the lactic acid, and then the photosynthetic bacteria will actually break those alcohols down really, really fast and convert them into other compounds. So there's all these different processes that are happening when you, that's why, like, if you were to take yeast, right, and you can make beer, which will produce alcohol. But if you add in other microbes, like we do during our fermentation process for the Micro Plus, there's yeast in there, and the yeast are producing alcohol. But what's happening is those alcohols are being consumed by other microorganisms and converted into other compounds, right? And so what's happening is you're not just benefiting from what the real benefit is, the compounds that all of these microbes produce. And so when you're going through the fermentation and process, and all of these different metabolites are being recycled and utilized to make more complex things that end up stabilized in your solution. So when you're adding the microbes, you're not just adding the microbes and you're adding all of those beneficial compounds that they produced during the fermentation process. So you're getting all the lactic acid bacteria, the acetic acid, you're getting the amino acids, you're getting the biofilms, you're getting the pellicle, you're getting you're just getting all these different things that are going to, the enzymes and the organic acids that are going to stimulate that soil microbiome. Copper, what's up, buddy? I think I got to take the dog out. He's barking at me. Anyway, go hit the website. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter. And then when I do all the pre-recorded podcasts and all of the free guides, you guys can get access to those and know when those are happening. I'm going to sign off. I got to take the dogs out. I'll see you guys later.